sometimes it's just been so natural to us, we don't realize that we're, maybe a strong way to say it is we're cursing our future. You can curse your future or you can bless your future. So be careful what you say.
I think, I love where you say we need to send out.
That's part of our message is you don't know what, God's dream for your life is bigger than your own. And that's what I've seen. I never dreamed 13 years ago that I'd be sitting here with you, or we'd be in the arena where I used to watch the Rockets play, and so.
Well, I think in that case, God was saying, I am everything, because I am.
Right.
Now, mine is a different take on it. It is what follows the word I am, I believe you're inviting into your life.
Joel Osteen has spent decades telling millions that better days are ahead. Every week, his message of hope reaches homes across America and around the world. His books have sold millions of copies. His church fills what was once an NBA arena. His smile has become one of the most recognizable faces in modern Christianity. But recently, that polished image has begun to show cracks. Questions about his wealth, his church's finances, controversial decisions during national disasters, and criticism of his teachings have sparked a growing debate that refuses to fade away. Supporters still see him as a pastor who inspires hope. Critics see something very different. So what is really happening behind the scenes? And why are more people than ever asking whether Joel Osteen's ministry is facing its biggest challenge yet? Long before he became America's most recognizable televangelist, Joel Osteen wasn't interested in standing behind a pulpit. Born in Houston, Texas, he grew up in a household where faith shaped nearly every aspect of daily life. His father, John Osteen, founded what would eventually become Lakewood Church after embracing charismatic Christianity. Starting in a modest building with only a few hundred seats, John believed he could build a ministry that reached far beyond Houston. Few imagined just how large that vision would become. As a child, Joel watched his father preach to steadily growing crowds, but unlike his siblings, he avoided the spotlight. He wasn't the outgoing preacher people expected him to become. Instead, he found comfort behind cameras, microphones, and television equipment. While others dreamed of delivering sermons, Joel became fascinated by broadcasting. He understood something that many churches had yet to recognize, that television could carry a message far beyond the walls of any sanctuary. After briefly attending college to study radio and television production, Joel returned home before completing his degree. Rather than pursuing traditional ministry, he focused entirely on building Lakewood's television program. For nearly 2 decades, he remained behind the scenes, producing broadcasts, editing sermons, adjusting lighting, and ensuring every service looked professional on television. Week after week, he watched his father's preaching from the editing room, unknowingly learning lessons that would later shape his own style. Despite constant encouragement from his father, Joel repeatedly refused to preach. He insisted he wasn't called to stand on stage. Public speaking wasn't something he believed he was meant to do. Friends, family, and church members accepted that Joel's future seemed destined to remain behind the camera. Then everything changed almost overnight. In January 1999, after years of persuasion, Joel finally agreed to deliver his very first sermon. It was a moment that seemed significant enough on its own, but no one realized history was about to take an unexpected turn. Just days later, John Osteen suffered a fatal heart attack. Without warning, Joel found himself leading a congregation numbering in the thousands. Many questioned whether he was prepared. Unlike most pastors leading churches of that size, Joel had never attended seminary. He had no formal theological degree and almost no preaching experience. Some predicted Lakewood Church would struggle under its inexperienced new leader. Instead, the exact opposite happened. Within only a few years, attendance exploded. Thousands became tens of thousands. Lakewood quickly transformed from one of Houston's largest churches into one of the biggest churches in the entire United States. Joel understood that reaching people required more than Sunday services. He dramatically expanded television broadcasts, purchased premium airtime across major markets, and invested heavily in media production. His sermons were intentionally different from traditional preaching. Rather than focusing on judgment, guilt, or condemnation, Joel emphasized encouragement, hope, purpose, and believing that God had greater plans ahead. For millions struggling through personal hardships, that message resonated deeply. As crowds continued growing, Lakewood faced a problem few churches ever experience. Their building simply wasn't large enough anymore. Then Joel announced an idea many considered impossible. Instead of constructing another church, Lakewood would transform Houston's former professional basketball arena into its new home. The plan stunned both supporters and critics. Renovating a massive sports arena into a church would require tens of millions of dollars and an enormous amount of construction. Yet the project moved forward. When the doors finally opened, thousands packed the former home of the Houston Rockets, while millions more watched around the world through television broadcasts. The arena symbolized something much bigger than a new location. It represented the arrival of a religious media empire. Every week, tens of thousands attended services in person. Millions more watched Joel on television across more than 100 countries. His books climbed bestseller lists. Conferences filled stadiums. Social media expanded his reach even further. Then came perhaps his biggest publishing success. When Joel released Your Best Life Now, expectations were modest. After all, he wasn't an established author competing with celebrity writers. But the book quickly became a publishing phenomenon. It remained on bestseller lists for years and sold millions of copies worldwide. Its success transformed Joel from a well-known pastor into an international celebrity. Soon additional books followed. Speaking invitations poured in from across America and overseas. Stadium events known as Night of Hope attracted enormous audiences eager to hear his uplifting message. To supporters, Joel represented positivity in an increasingly negative world. To critics, however, another story was beginning to unfold. As Joel's popularity grew, so did questions surrounding his prosperity message. Unlike many pastors who regularly preached about repentance, sacrifice, or suffering, Joel focused heavily on possibility, success, confidence, and believing that God wanted people to flourish. Many found those sermons refreshing. Others believed something essential was missing. The criticism became louder as Joel's personal success became more visible. Reports estimated his personal wealth in the tens of millions of dollars. His Houston home attracted attention because of its enormous value, while additional properties only fueled public curiosity. Joel repeatedly explained that he did not receive a salary from Lakewood Church and that his income came primarily from book sales and speaking engagements. For supporters, that explanation settled the issue. For critics, it raised even more questions. Could a pastor who preached abundance avoid appearing connected to extraordinary personal wealth? Those debates intensified as Lakewood itself continued expanding. Television production alone required millions of dollars annually. Large-scale events, administrative expenses, broadcasting costs, and maintaining one of America's largest churches demanded enormous financial resources. Supporters argued those investments allowed Lakewood to spread hope globally. Critics argued the priorities seemed increasingly focused on media growth rather than traditional ministry. The controversy reached an entirely new level during the COVID-19 pandemic. When reports surfaced that Lakewood Church had accepted millions of dollars through the federal Paycheck Protection Program, public reaction was immediate. Many questioned why one of America's wealthiest churches needed financial assistance originally intended to help struggling businesses and organizations survive pandemic shutdowns. Although church officials later stated the funds were returned and emphasized that none of the money personally benefited Joel or Victoria Osteen, the headlines had already spread across national media. The controversy reignited broader discussions about church finances, tax exemptions, and public accountability. For the first time in years, Joel's critics seemed louder than ever. But that wasn't the only controversy people remembered. Years earlier, Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston, leaving thousands desperate for shelter. When Lakewood Church initially remained closed, social media erupted with criticism. Images circulating online appeared to show roads around the church accessible, while countless families searched for emergency refuge. Eventually, Lakewood opened its doors and provided assistance. However, the timing became one of the most debated moments in Joel Osteen's career. Supporters insisted the church needed time to ensure the building was safe and operational. Critics argued a church with such vast resources should have responded immediately. The debate continues even today. frequently resurfacing whenever natural disasters strike Texas. Each controversy alone might have faded with time. Together, however, they began creating a very different public narrative. Instead of discussing best-selling books and inspiring sermons, more conversations centered around wealth, transparency, and whether Lakewood Church had drifted away from its original mission. Even among Christians, opinions became increasingly divided. Some continued viewing Joel as a gifted communicator bringing hope to millions. Others questioned whether his version of Christianity emphasized personal success more than biblical teaching. Those theological debates soon became just one piece of a much larger conversation. Because the biggest challenge Joel Osteen would face wasn't simply criticism from religious leaders. It was a series of events that would put both his church and his leadership under an entirely different kind of spotlight. The questions surrounding Joel Osteen didn't stop with finances or theology. If anything, they grew even louder as one controversy after another placed Lakewood Church under an intense public spotlight. Supporters continued defending the ministry, pointing to the millions of people inspired by Joel's optimistic message. Critics, however, argued that the growing list of incidents painted a very different picture. And perhaps no event damaged the church's public image more than what happened during Hurricane Harvey. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey unleashed catastrophic flooding across Houston. Entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath rising water, families climbed onto rooftops waiting for rescue, and thousands desperately searched for safe shelter. Because Lakewood Church occupied one of the city's largest indoor facilities, many naturally assumed its massive arena would immediately become an emergency refuge. Instead, questions began appearing online almost instantly. The church announced that the building was inaccessible due to flooding concerns, explaining that safety issues prevented them from opening immediately. But as photos and videos circulated across social media, many people claimed the roads surrounding the church appeared largely passable. Before long, the hashtag demanding that Lakewood open its doors spread rapidly across the internet. The criticism became impossible to ignore. Celebrities, journalists, and ordinary citizens questioned why a building capable of holding more than 16,000 people wasn't already housing displaced families. Eventually, Lakewood did open its doors and began assisting relief efforts, but for many observers, the damage to its public reputation had already been done. Joel later maintained that the church had never intended to turn people away and that safety inspections delayed the opening. His supporters accepted that explanation. His critics never did. Years later, whenever another major storm threatened Texas, social media users frequently referenced Hurricane Harvey, showing just how deeply that controversy had become connected to Joel Osteen's public image. Another difficult chapter unfolded during the COVID-19 pandemic. As businesses, charities, and nonprofit organizations struggled to survive lockdowns, the federal government introduced financial assistance programs to help preserve jobs. Reports later revealed that Lakewood Church received approximately $4.4 million through the Paycheck Protection Program. The news immediately sparked nationwide debate. Many questioned whether one of America's largest and most financially successful churches should have accepted money from a program originally designed to help struggling organizations remain operational. Church officials responded by explaining that the funds were used for payroll and organizational expenses rather than personal enrichment. They also emphasized that Joel Osteen had not received a church salary for many years and that his personal income came primarily from books and speaking engagements. Eventually, the funds were returned. But once again, public perception proved difficult to change. For critics, the controversy reinforced long-standing concerns about transparency and financial priorities within megachurch ministries. Financial discussions only intensified when attention turned toward Lakewood's annual budget. According to publicly discussed figures presented in the source material, only a relatively small percentage of the church's budget was directed toward missions and outreach, while much larger amounts supported television production, weekly services, administration, and media operations. Supporters argued those investments allowed Lakewood to reach millions of people every week through broadcasts and digital platforms. Critics saw something entirely different. They questioned whether a church should devote so many resources to expanding its media presence while comparatively less went directly toward charitable work. The debate reflected a broader conversation happening across America about the role of megachurches in modern society. Should churches operate like global media organizations? Or should their primary focus remain local ministry and direct community assistance? Joel's ministry became one of the most visible examples of that ongoing discussion. The criticism extended beyond finances into theology as well. Joel has long been associated with teachings often described as the prosperity gospel or the word of faith movement. His sermons consistently encourage listeners to expect blessings, speak positively about their future, and believe that God desires abundance rather than defeat. Millions of people credit those messages with helping them overcome discouragement, depression, and personal setbacks. Others believe the emphasis creates unrealistic expectations. Some theologians have argued that Joel spends relatively little time discussing subjects such as sin, repentance, judgment, or suffering compared with many traditional Christian pastors. Instead, his sermons frequently center on hope, confidence, personal growth, and trusting God's plan. Supporters describe that approach as refreshing and encouraging. Critics argue it leaves out essential elements of biblical teaching. Those disagreements have followed Joel for much of his ministry and remain one of the most significant reasons opinions about him are often sharply divided. Then came one of the darkest days in Lakewood Church's history. In February 2024, tragedy struck when an armed woman entered the church carrying weapons and opened fire inside the building. The terrifying incident shocked worshipers and quickly became national news. Security officers responded, but not before multiple people were injured, including the shooter's young son, who suffered devastating injuries during the exchange of gunfire. The event left the congregation deeply shaken. Afterward, Joel urged members not to surrender to fear. He prayed publicly for everyone affected, including the victims and their families. For many church members, those words provided comfort during an incredibly painful time. Others believed the tragedy highlighted larger issues involving security, mental health, and public safety that extended far beyond the church itself. Regardless of perspective, the shooting became another defining moment in Lakewood's history. Even after the immediate crisis ended, difficult questions remained about security procedures, emergency preparedness, and whether warning signs could have been addressed sooner. As if those challenges weren't enough, Joel now faces another reality affecting churches across the United States. Attendance patterns are changing. Younger generations increasingly approach faith differently from previous generations. Many seek smaller communities, deeper personal relationships, and greater transparency from religious organizations. Large institutions, celebrity pastors, and highly produced services don't necessarily appeal to them the way they once did. That cultural shift presents a challenge not only for Lakewood Church but for many large ministries built during previous decades. Joel continues reaching millions through television, books, podcasts, and social media. Yet maintaining that influence in a rapidly changing world may prove more difficult than ever before. Still, through every controversy, one fact remains impossible to ignore. Lakewood Church continues attracting thousands of worshipers each week. Millions continue watching Joel's broadcasts around the globe. His books remain bestsellers. His message still resonates with people searching for encouragement during difficult times. Whether viewed as an inspiring pastor or a controversial public figure, Joel Osteen has become one of the most influential religious voices of the modern era. His supporters see a man who has dedicated his life to spreading hope. His critics see a ministry that raises serious questions about wealth, accountability, and the commercialization of faith. The truth, as always, depends largely on who's telling the story. What cannot be denied is that Joel Osteen's journey has entered a new chapter, one where every decision, every controversy, and every public appearance is examined more closely than ever before. Whether his legacy will ultimately be remembered for inspiring millions or for the debates that surrounded his ministry remains a question only time can answer. One thing is certain: the conversation surrounding Joel Osteen isn't ending anytime soon.